Time for Mike Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk, brought to you by State Farm agent Gary Patterson. For 35 years, Gary's been serving the real estate needs from Lugoff to Lexington and Columbia to Blythewood. Auto, home, life insurance, and business insurance can all be handled by Gary, who spends countless hours helping South Carolinians with all their insurance needs and making a difference in the community. So go check out GaryPatterson.net today, and Gary will go over the best plans for you and your family. That's GaryPatterson.net.
Brought to you by Love Chevy. Act now for springtacular savings on the best selection of new Chevys. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive.
All right, time to welcome in Mike Morgan, whose voice in no way equals the voice of the guy who just did the Chevy commercial. That guy has got some tubes. He's got some pipes.
Yes, he does, Phil. He surely does.
Wow, Mike, your voice has gotten deeper.
Yeah. By the way, to your point, the 2 hours of this fine program, I've always found that the second hour is an incredible 60 minutes, but the first hour kind of sucks. But so I insisted on being in the second hour, and I am proud to be part of this hour.
You lead off the second hour on Thursday night, so that makes you special.
It's an honor. Let me tell you something. 7 o'clock, prime time as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Now, if there's anybody who knows the brain of Ray Tanner outside of Ray Tanner, it's Mike Morgan. What is going through the brain of Ray Tanner right now?
History would tell you what's going through the brain of Ray Tanner is very similar to the brain of every other SEC AD that goes through this process, regardless of the sport. You start off and you swing for the fences. If you go back to the football search, remember Tom Herman. Tom Herman was not going to listen to hardly anybody other than Texas. That was his dream job. But he respected the fact that Ray's a former coach in an AD chair and actually seriously considered the job, even though eventually he didn't take it. Kirby Smart was also offered by Ray and was going to take it to the point where Georgia got frightened, fired Mark Richt, some would say surprisingly, and basically blocked Carolina from getting Kirby Smart. In baseball, the first time around, he went after Dan McDonald of Louisville. He went after Kevin O'Sullivan of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the same thing. You like every other AD, you go after the big fish, and then if you don't land them, and usually you don't, then you go to plan B. And there's a lot of rumors out there of what that's going to be. I'm not convinced Ray himself knows who it's going to be at this point. I think you weigh all your options. You go for your who's on your one line, and then if you don't nab that, you go on your two line. So I do think this. I think there's a sense of comfort knowing that he's got a guy. If everything else doesn't come to fruition, he's got a guy in Monty Lee who he's very familiar with, who the players all love, who was a great assistant at Carolina for a number of years, and, of course, has been a head coach of two programs, one mid-major and one power in the state. And so and I don't know this for sure. I mean, that could be the number one choice, but I'm just saying based on history, what Ray normally does, like most ADs, you go after the head honchos, guys that maybe been to Omaha or they're the hottest candidate out there. And if that doesn't work, you go to line two. And if line two is Monty Lee, that's a hell of a line too. So if I were to guess, and I have not spoken with him, he's probably working the burner phone as we speak. That would be my guess on the way he's approaching it.
Do you think we could have a resolution by sometime next week? Or do you think that perhaps, you say swinging for the fences, perhaps there'll be a coach involved in the College World Series that he wants to wait on? Would he be willing to drag things out until that's over with?
If you were to make me hazard a guess, I would say in my crystal ball there'll be a press conference on Tuesday, but that is no inside knowledge. I think after the Super Regionals are complete, at that point, you remember now the portal's open.
Mm-hmm.
Now Monty's kind of running that himself, but I don't think you want to be waiting till after the end of Omaha, for example, to make the hire. And I don't think it'll go that deep. I would guess next week.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Morgan with us, Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk. All right, let's delve further into some potential names outside of Monty Lee. Does Cliff Godwin make sense to you at East Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just asking me what makes sense, that certainly would be up there. I think what I like about Godwin is that Godwin has been an assistant with 2 SEC programs in addition to the job he's done as a head coach at ECU. I think that experience in the league is invaluable. I think it's really hard to hire somebody who's never been in the SEC and all of a sudden is trying to kind of navigate through those waters. I think that's difficult. But I think Godwin's a great coach out there. I mean, McDonald's been mentioned, although he's turned it down before, doesn't seem to want to leave. A lot of people say that Godwin does not want to leave in spite of the fact that a program like Carolina could more than double his salary. But money is not – it's not always just about who offers a penny more than the next guy, or in this case, about $500,000 more. You know, and then you could always go back down the Kevin O'Sullivan highway. If they get eliminated this weekend, you know, is he finally ready to make a move? He's clearly has flirted with other programs, including LSU just a few years ago. So, I mean, I think all those names are on the table, and I'm sure there's one we're not thinking about. I mean, you got Pollard at Duke. He's certainly done a great job with that program. Walter at Wake Forest. There's quite a few good candidates, but as always is the case, and Phil, you've covered more of these than probably anybody in the state of South Carolina. I think fans make the wrong presumption that you can just get whoever you want, and that's very far from the truth.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, since you mentioned Kevin O'Sullivan, let's move into some of the games on the field this weekend. First off, Florida winning a regional on the road. How impressed were you with their play this past weekend? And do they have enough in your mind to take out Clemson this weekend in the Supers?
Impressed, not totally shocked. You know, you see an SEC team with a 3 seed next to their name, and they're traveling to your venue. I'm sure Oklahoma State was thinking, my goodness, we got to take these guys on as a 3 with one of the best players in the game in Caglione. And you know they've got some talent for whatever reason. They struggled this year and barely got in. Ole Miss barely got in a few years ago, and they won the national championship. So could they do – yeah, I mean, we're at the point here when it's a super and it's 2 out of 3, anybody can win it. I mean, absolutely anybody can win it. So nothing would surprise me. And even Evansville of all teams, they've got 2 stud pitchers, so it's possible. It'd be an upset, but it wouldn't be the farthest thing that I've ever seen, a la Stony Brook and Fresno State and Kent State. A lot of teams that have made it to Omaha that nobody would have ever picked in a bracket. So I think they're all good matchups, and nothing would surprise me other than I would be surprised if you didn't have at least 3-4 teams from the SEC wind up in Omaha.
What's your take on the Georgia-NC State Super Regional, with Georgia being able to host this weekend, NC State having taken out South Carolina this past weekend? It gets us to this week that we've been discussing Mark Kingston's departure. But does NC State, can they pitch it well enough to beat a team that's going to score probably 10, 11 runs?
And can Georgia pitch well enough to win games at this point in the season, right? I mean, that's been the question with Georgia all year long. Great at the plate, not so great on the mound. But No, that's another one. Georgia hasn't been to Omaha since 2008. Can you believe that?
Fire the coach.
2008.
Fire the coach. Fire the coach.
Well,
they have been.
They have been. They fired the guy that took them to Omaha 3 times. As a former broadcast partner of mine, Dave Perno, and everywhere we went, he used to look at the other dugout and go, "Can you believe they fired me and this school hired a guy like that?" I mean, it was killing them. It was absolutely killing them, and I don't blame them. They haven't been the same since Perno. But clearly, the guy they got in Wes Johnson from LSU, I know they're very high on him, and he's done a tremendous job in year one. Now it helps when you inherit the potential number 1 pick in the draft, Charlie Condon, and that was a guy that was a preferred walk-on who was recruited by the previous staff. But he's been terrific. Their lineup overall has been terrific. I think that's a very entertaining super. Anytime you got SEC, ACC, it's always a headliner when it comes to a super.
Couple more moments with Mike Morgan. Morgan on the move right here on Sports Talk. So let's talk about Florida Clemson. This Clemson team has lived on the edge all season long, something like, 25 or so come from behind wins, and that's a great quality, certainly is a great quality. But if they fall behind this Florida team, Florida has got some impressive credentials of their own. And if you fall behind these guys, 125 home runs, that's 6th nationally, 10th in the country, 5th in the SEC in strikeouts at about 11 per game. They fielded a .981 percentage, 5th nationally. They're going to start a freshman right-hander, Liam Peterson, who's come on very strong for them the latter part of the season. So saying all that about Florida, despite what their record looks like, I think you do have to take a step back and consider what they did at Oklahoma State to beat the Cowboys twice to win that regional as to be something very impressive. And you can't be fooled if you're a Clemson fan. You can't be fooled by the record. In fact, Eric Bakich said here the other night, he called Florida one of the best teams in the country. So what do you think?
Well, I think what I just said. I think it's an unpredictable. I mean, we're kind of going back to the same matchup, right? It's unpredictable. Clemson obviously had the better regular season. The thing about being a team like Florida, and this helped Ole Miss a few years ago. It helped Mississippi State. When you get in as a team that wasn't dominant in the regular season and you kind of squeak in, I think the mentality is you're kind of playing with house money. Like, you really just can play loose. I've seen too many times a number 1 overall seed get a little tight. That's one of the reasons why they haven't won it since 1999, which is, for my money, one of the most amazing stats in all of sports. Mm-hmm. I think there is something to being able to go in there, especially when you've already got talent. I mean, obviously, Florida's always recruiting talent, but they weren't a good team all year long. They weren't good enough, and they just barely got in. And now all of a sudden, am I surprised that they've made it this far? Not really. Would I be surprised if they beat Clemson? Not really. Clemson's a better team, and I've been a fan of Eric Bakich since I covered him at Michigan, the year he took them all the way to the championship series. But I think it's a great opportunity for Clemson, who hasn't been to Omaha in quite some time, and for Florida, they can continue to play the role of the spoiler.
Do you think Caglianone's the best player in college baseball, even though he's not among the finalists for the Golden Spikes Award?
Yeah, that was a little surprising. I mean, my vote would go to Charlie Condon because I get it. Like, if you're voting just based on being a two-way guy, then Caglianone's the winner. He's the Ohtani of college baseball. But the season that Condon put together is as good as I've ever seen in 30 years of college baseball. And with the bats being what they are, now they're a little bit juiced in my opinion, but they're not late 90s gorilla ball juiced. I just think what he's done, and it's not just power. He's not just slugging. Look at the average. Look at the on base, the OPS, everything, just dominating everything. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Mike, you getting your Big Mac with your large fries and your extra large Coke there? Okay.
It's a pizza with a salad, so it's slightly healthier than that.
You have a great
Slightly.
meal there. I'm glad that once again you're cooking for the wife. That's great.
Yes, this is fine dining in the Morgan household.
You have a great meal and a great night, and we'll talk to you next week, and we appreciate it
Mike.
greatly.
Okay, sounds good. You guys be good.
All right, see you later. Always interrupting the food chain there at the Morgan family. Okay.
We have never talked to him, I don't think, where he hasn't been doing something else at the same time.
No,
That's how talented he is, because he can multitask on the show.
we're secondary in his mind. We're that redheaded stepchild.
He's either in the airport, he's at a game somewhere, at
Yeah.
the pizza place.
He takes pity on us and just gives us his time for nothing.